Hey everyone, this is your body code practitioner out here in Salt Lake City now. Just wanted to do a quick video in regards to the emotion code because I'm still reading it with you guys. So hopefully you guys are still enjoying this and any input. I'm going to use this microphone here today just because I want to make sure you guys can hear me. There's not a huge echo at all. But if you can, we are on page 40. I want to let you guys know we ended off on thoughts are powerful. So if I make any side note, I'm going to say side note, and then we're going to go back to reading again. So here we go. So page 40, thoughts are powerful. Your thoughts are immensely powerful. Whenever you say what you're thinking or write something down, you're using the energy of your thoughts to affect the world around you. It is through thought, belief, and intention that all things happen. Scientific experiments have repeatedly shown that thoughts can directly influence the rate of growth in plants, fungi, and bacteria. William Tiller, a physicist at Stanford University, has shown that thoughts can affect electronic instruments. Studies have proven that when the energy of one person's thoughts is directed intentionally, it can impact someone else's, regardless of whether they are nearby or all the way around the world. Depending on whether the person focusing the thought uses calming or activating imagery, for instance, they can create a greater sense of relaxation or anxiety in the targeted person. The effect is so distinctive it can be measured in a laboratory by galvanic skin response, a highly sensitive method of measuring electrical changes in the skin. So I wanted to kind of mention to you one of the coolest experiments that kind of mind boggled me. This is a side note in regards to the effect of thought to someone. Is I know Dr. Brad talks about how looking at the back of someone's head, someone can turn around. But even more than that, I always think of comedians and how they receive energy from the crowd, and how it's almost like depending on what energy you put out there, you probably have a higher possibility of being heckled. And I always thought it was very interesting that whenever, let's say, someone would turn around and not facing the crowd, and the muscle tester up there, pushing the arm, would say, they would tell the crowd before, hey, we're going to think positive thoughts. When I put my hand out like this, we're all going to think positive thoughts about Stan, this person next to me, and I'm going to muscle test the person and watch. If it's all positive thoughts, the arm tests strong. So people's thoughts empowered the person on stage. Now, when he would close his fist, and he'd say, when I close my fist, obviously the person, Stan, wasn't hearing this speech before he came up on stage, so it's non-biased. But he would say, if we close my fist, I want you to think negative thoughts about Stan, and then let's see what happens with his arm. His arm goes weak. So a group of people, or even a person, has the ability to disempower or empower people with their thoughts. It's very interesting. And so you want to make sure you have a shield, which is talk to your body code practitioner about acquiring a shield, which is very simple. If you're listening to my voice right now, all you want to do is swipe your hand over your head. You want to say, I'm now placing a shield around me that will only allow love and positive energies in, and it'll deflect negative energies out. It is something that's permanent, and it covers my whole body completely. And that's it. Then if you muscle test yourself, hey, do I have a shield now? Your body tests positive, and you'll always have it. Maybe something that you want to mention when you're mentioning when you're receiving it, so that you're always going to have it. So anyway, I wanted to get into it, back to the book, but it's just very interesting that how thoughts can affect people. And anyway, so the book goes back here. So it says, imagine how your thoughts affect you. Everyone has some kind of internal conversation at times. What do you say to yourself? Many people criticize themselves far more often than they praise themselves. Negative self-talk may be hurting you more than you realize. What about other people around you? Do you ever wonder if others can sense how you feel about them? Other people's subconscious minds are continually detecting the vibrations of your thoughts. Have you ever had a moment with a friend when they blurted out just what you were thinking? Have you ever instinctively known who was calling you before they answered the phone? These are not coincidences. They are evidences of the power of thought energy. Finding trapped emotions using the emotion code is along the same lines as detecting the vibration of another person's thoughts or feelings. The difference is that you can ask the subconscious mind and actually get definitive answers from the body through muscle testing, which is more precise than guessing. Then you can release the trapped emotions and know with certainty that they are permanently gone. Serendipity versus precision. Any alternative healthcare practitioner can tell you that almost everyone carries around old emotional energies from their past. Our physical bodies hold on to trapped emotions, and doctors and body workers are aware of this because often a simple touch can bring out a flood of emotions and memories in a patient. Nearly every practitioner I know, from chiropractors to energy workers to massage therapists, has had the experience of provoking an unexpected emotional release in a patient as the body let go of the energy it had been holding on to. Releasing these trapped emotions can result in a profound and immediate healing. While any emotional release that occurs in a serendipitous way is welcome, this is usually not the intention of the therapist, and any emotional release that occurs is only accidental. The emotion code approach, however, is much more deliberate. I sometimes think of it as emotional surgery because we are searching out the trapped emotions with the clear intention of removing them. I once had, just a side note, I once had someone mention to me, where do the trapped emotions go? Like, where do they, like, I think she was a very empathic person, and she was like, where do they go? Do they go into the stratosphere? I'm like, you know what really, really matters, I told her, is that it's not in your system anymore, and it's not affecting your productivity. I always like to mention the emotion code on a side note that less trapped emotions, less reactivity. Less reactivity, more productivity. So less trapped emotions, less reactivity, more productivity. I always say that all to my clients because imagine if it's almost like getting rhino skin, because you don't want to be very reactive all the time. You want to be able to feel emotions because you're human, but then you don't want to swim in it. So feeling it and swimming in it is very, very different. And my thought is the more you use the emotion code, the more you do body code sessions, the more you do emotion code sessions, you're becoming less and less reactive, which then enables you to feel emotions but not swim in them, so you can keep moving forward and keep being very productive. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're a mother, if you're a father, there's so many reasons why you need to not be reactive. You want to stay in a relationship and be productive. You probably don't want to be reactive when your partner says something that triggers you. You don't want to be reactive. And so those are some thoughts there. Back to the book. The emotion code approach, however, is much more deliberate. Okay, here it is. Trapped emotions in children. One of my early experiences with trapped emotions happened with my son, Rhett, when he was a toddler. Rhett and Drew are fraternal twins, and they were about as different as two boys can be. Drew was always very affectionate with both my wife and me. Rhett was very affectionate with my wife, Jean, but developed some sort of hang-up about me around age 3. When I would try to hug him or snuggle with him, he would push away and say, "Bad doctor, away." At first, we thought he was just passing through some kind of stage. We assumed he would grow out of it, but his negative feelings towards me persisted for over a year. It was a source of heartache and frustration for me. I don't understand why my little boy felt this way about me. One evening, Jean and I were sitting and talking together. Rhett was sitting on Jean's lap. I opened my arms to him to give him a hug. Again, he pushed me away and said, "Bad doctor, away." This time, it felt like a heart might break. I could feel the heartache welling up within my chest, and I felt like I was going to cry. My wife said, maybe he has a trapped emotion. Up until that point, we'd only treated adults for trapped emotions. We decided to check Rhett and see. Using the emotion code, we found that he did have a trapped emotion. The emotion was grief. But he hadn't created this emotion. It actually originated with me. In fact, it didn't even have anything to do with Rhett. My daughter and I were having an argument one day, and I experienced an emotion of grief. And Rhett witnessed the argument and absorbed the negative energy into his body. We'll discuss absorbed trapped emotions like this later on. We released the trapped emotion, grief, and to my amazement, Rhett walked right over to me and put his arms around me. As I cried and held my little boy, I was astonished and excited at the same time. If my son could be changed so instantaneously by removing a trapped emotion, how many other children could be helped? Now, on a side note, in regards to children, if you're a body code practitioner, here's something I suggest to you. And if you're a client, hopefully you understand that this is what I do in my practice, and I've been doing this for 4.5 years. And if you're a body code practitioner, emotion code practitioner, why not do this? And one of the things is that, I have such a huge hunger to help out kids because I wish somebody would have helped me out when I was a kid. And I was taking to a psychologist just because I wrote haikus. Because you write haikus is not a really good reason to go to a psychologist. But they were very sad haikus, melancholic poems. I don't know. What's wrong with melancholic poems? Anyway, the point is this, is that my mother and father were concerned for me, thinking, oh, he's depressed or he's, something's going on with that. But what I really needed was probably just trapped emotions were probably in my body. And so I wanted to recommend you, if you're a practitioner, is to take the time and ask, do you have any kids? When you're working with them, do you have any kids? Yeah, I have 3 of them. Great. Just to let you know, whether you work with me or not in the future, I'd love to offer a complimentary session for the child. Why would you do that? Because these kids are dealing with energies, probably the heaviest of the bulk, a ton of inherited emotions. I mean, they're beautiful because they've had the most experience in the other world before they came here in the spirit body. But for you to leave them there with like really heavy emotions from inherited stuff is just kind of sad. I wouldn't do that. So that's why I always say, do you have 3 kids? Do you have 30 kids? Do you have 10 kids? I'll give them all a free session. Now, typically with kids, I do it via proxy if they're very young. And so I do it through the mother with giving me permission. But what I do is I do 15 minutes each child. And I say 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here. So if we do a 30-minute session, typical for adult, I'll just spend 15 minutes with 2 kids. If you have 4 kids, I'm going to do 2 sessions, right? 4 kids, each 15 minutes each. And what will that do? Well, that will also, that hopefully that gives you just personal satisfaction that you could put a dent in this kid. The second thing is the mother's going to trust you more because you went out of your way to help them out. And number 3 is the husband, who's the skeptical, negative, narcissistic, male, beardy, hairy. You get the point. Like that guy who doesn't want, who's like, oh gosh, what do you mean with a woo-woo person to help out our family? Like, come on, like that guy. You'll actually give him an opening if he sees his kids change. Because see, mothers and wives, they can be kind of biased a little bit, be like, oh, look at me, I'm clearing my heart wall, like, blah, blah. But if the kid changes the sleeping patterns, food aversions, gets better grades, what do you think the dad's going to say? Hey, what's happening with our son? I noticed huge differences. Oh, that's that woo-woo doctor that you won't look at. Oh, I might have to look into that. You know how many fathers I've worked with now because I've worked with their kids, and the kids are unbiased, So anyway, that's a little tip for you practitioners out there. Okay, so let's see. I wanted to mention here. The pilot's daughter. The next day in the clinic, I was talking with the patient about what had happened with Rhett. She says, I think my little girl might have a trapped emotion. My husband's an airplane pilot. Every week he's gone for several days in a row. When he comes back, our 6-year-old daughter will run and hide from him. She just won't have anything to do with him when he comes home from his trips. And it breaks his heart. She brought her daughter to the office the following day. I found out the little girl had a trapped emotion about her father. In this case, the trapped emotion was sorrow. It was her own sorrow, but about her father leaving and being gone for days at a time. At some point, she had felt this emotion strongly enough that it overwhelmed her body, and the emotion got trapped. The emotional energy was exerting a very strong subconscious influence and was affecting her behavior towards her father. We released the emotion, and mother and daughter went home. The following week, the mother returned to the office and said, Dr. Nelson, your emotional treatment really works. My husband was away when I came in and had my daughter treated. A few days ago, my husband came home from overseas. When he opened the door, a little girl ran and jumped into his arms. She's never done that ever. He is thrilled. Thank you so much. Drew and his traumatic birth. Okay, by the time our twin boys were 4 years old, Rhett was very articulate and talkative. Drew was just the opposite, so much so that my wife and I began to grow concerned. At 4 years old, Drew still wasn't speaking in sentences. In fact, he rarely said a word. When he started to speak, he'd often put his hand over his mouth as though he was afraid to say anything. He seemed fearful in general. When we went to the neighborhood pool, Rhett jumped in, but Drew only ever stood at the edge of the water looking anxious. He was overly cautious about trying anything new. He was claustrophobic and also feared being locked out of the house or left behind anywhere. If he went outside to play and the door closed behind him, he would panic and scream. Psychological testing showed that Drew had a high IQ, but was not developing at the same pace as other kids. Hearing tests showed that his hearing was normal. There seemed to be no explanation for what was going on with Drew. After our experience with Rhett, we wondered if Drew might have trapped emotions too. Little did we realize that there were the actual cause of his troubles. As we tested him, we quickly found a number of trapped emotions that were the result of traumatic things that had happened on the day he was born and shortly thereafter. Jean's labor and delivery had been very long, lasting 22 hours total. Rhett was born first. He looked beautiful and content and immediately went to sleep. Drew was born 14 minutes later and emerged blue and limp and looking really rough. A team of doctors circled around him, unsure if he would make it. His condition was critical. He pulled through, but the next 10 days or so continued to be very traumatic. We had both, by the way, if anyone has ever, on a side note, if anyone's ever had traumatic experience in regards to babies or miscarriage, did you know that you can use the body code and say, you can do what they call an attunement session. You can say, I have complete peace with this traumatic moment with this baby, or I have complete peace with my baby passing away. And we can ask the body, what's the percentage on that? Oh, look, you're at 29.47%. And if you want to be very superly obnoxious, which I hopefully you're not the obnoxious type, you could go 29.9473219424337. I mean, you can go all the way out there if you really, really want. Dr. Brad says you can. Why? Because the body is that exact. You don't think it uses decimal points? It definitely its efficiency of like what the body needs, how many blood cells, how many white blood cells, how many, like how much blood should go here. I mean, you can just imagine how intelligent our subconscious really is. And so, yes, it can cut down decimal points. It can put down numbers. And anyway, I just want to let you know that you can do that. I do that sometimes. I tell people, list me the 5 top traumatic moments in your life, and let's see if we can get peace with it, maybe post heart wall. And that'll help them out. Who knows what areas it's affecting, whether it's emotional or physical. Okay, so here's the last part. As we tested him, we quickly found a number of trapped emotions that were the result of traumatic things that had happened on the day he was born shortly thereafter. Where are we here? He pulled through, but the next 10 days or so continued to be very traumatic. Yeah. We had both taken both of the babies home when they were a couple of days old, but Drew had to be readmitted to the hospital for testing because he was unable to keep any breast milk down and was rapidly losing weight. We were told that he had picked up a life-threatening infection during his first few days. The doctors had to do a spinal tap on his tiny body and administer antibiotics intravenously to save his life. Again, our wishes. Gene and I were ordered out of the room for this procedure. We were unable to comfort Drew in any way, and he could only listen helplessly as he screamed in terror while the doctors repeatedly tried to insert the needle into his tiny veins into his spine. We didn't tell Drew's traumatic experience ourselves, and we never discussed these events with him when he was a child. It was very upsetting for us to even think about them. 4 years later, as far as we know, he had no memory of these events, but he did have a lot of fear about a lot of things. One by one, we found and released trapped emotions that related to these traumatic events. We were amazed by what Drew had perceived as an infant and how deeply it had scarred him emotionally. He probably expected that coming to the world would be a wonderful thing. Instead, he came into an incredibly painful situation that he could scarcely cope with. It was like being born into hell. As you might imagine, he had trapped emotions of fear, terror, and abandonment. Undoubtedly, these are the exact feelings he had during the emergency room procedures that we all found so difficult to endure. Drew also had developed a trapped emotion of panic while he was in the womb, waiting in line behind his reluctant brother, who was in no hurry to emerge from his dark and comfortable home. This trapped emotion of panic proved to be the reason behind his claustrophobia. In addition, he had trapped emotion of anger that he had inherited from his grandfather. It was actually this inherited anger that was making him reluctant to talk. He was afraid that he would hurt someone with his words, which explained why he would always cover his mouth when he spoke. We released all these trapped emotions and retired for the night. The next morning at breakfast, we couldn't believe the difference. Drew was a little chatterbox. Suddenly, and for the first time in his life, he was speaking in complete sentences. Without these trapped emotions keeping him attached to the traumas of the past, he was able to let go of his fears. His claustrophobia vanished along with his fearful attitude. He is free to become bright, happy, and inquisitive. As time went on, I realized more and more how problematic, even devastating trapped emotions can be for children and adults. Here are a couple more stories submitted by emotion code users that illustrate how the emotion code can relieve suffering for children. All right, guys. So with that, hopefully you guys enjoyed some of the input that I put in there. He mentioned at the end testimonials. Testimonials is very, very important. Today I asked maybe 2 or 3 clients to share their testimonial to my practice page. Why would I do that? Well, because she just told me that all the IBS symptoms that she was having, she's not having them anymore. Do you think I want her to share her story? Yes. I have another lady who had nerve issues with her feet, and she's had them for many, many years. She had cold feet. Sometimes her feet would turn purple, and we worked on it probably once or twice, maybe 3 times, and she's seeing amazing results. Her feet aren't going numb anymore. She's able to walk better. She doesn't have these weird twinges. Her legs don't get swollen. I mean, and I know we worked on some acupuncture points in the body code, but these stories need to get out. These people, like, if this is actually the future of medicine, we should be gathering testimonials by the truckload, like not just here and there, like, yeah, if you want, leave a testimonial. No, like, it's very important that people know that this stuff is real and that it can help you out. And so with that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this reading session with me. We ended off at page 45. We were at the singing in the shower part. I will see you guys next Monday. Tomorrow I will be doing at some point a question and answer thing there. So I will be doing a live, and hopefully I'll see you there. So with that, take care. Make sure you press the subscribe button and also put the little bell button there. That will give you the notification that I'm going live. And if you have a question, I would write it down today. So that way tomorrow, if you have it, I may be able to answer it and help you out in your journey. With that, love you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.